tree, just not maple syrup.
So this right here, yeah, just like maple syrup. This right here is frankincense, and it's oil from Young Living is the company. You guys can just pass that
Is it
around.
very strong?
Oh yeah, you don't have to put it right underneath your nose.
Well,
but you
I'm
can-
not gonna, I'm allergic to everything.
Oh, okay. Got it.
That's the reason my throat stays like it is.
Oh, okay.
If anybody comes around me that's been smoking, I have smoke on them and I can't even breathe or anything.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to have the allergic reaction or anything. Smell it?
Now, if you tell me you can't smell
I
that,
smell it, darling, I'm trying to pick it up. I feel like I'm a guru on a lot of this stuff. Not myself. You know what I smell in it? You don't know in the back.
Hey,
Pine
Jason.
tar.
Pine tar?
I smell the taste of
Oh, I'm
some
from-
pine.
That's what I mean. Stop up, stop.
That's what I mean. I pick up
I can't, cause anything that smells
like some pine.
stuffs me up now.
Hey, I
That's
feel
pretty good, I
I
think.
knew I wasn't gonna put it
it's
up.
like smell of
Now, what are some of the things that it does,
Something around there.
Amanda? Amanda's gonna try to find us some information on, let Lucy
Is that what it is?
know. Amanda's gonna look up some. Hey, were you here last week, Lucy? Oh, okay. Well, last week we covered what we were covering in First Samuel. There was a part where the showbread was brought up, and where it was a very specific. That was 2 weeks ago when we first mentioned it, but last week we got into it. And there was a specific way that the bread had to be made with specific ingredients, and the specific way it had to be laid out, and a specific, there's all these specific things, and one of the specific things was frankincense, covered with frankincense and all that. And we just, we brought we had some frankincense oil here today. We brought it with us, and Sister Betty brought us a book telling us how it's made, and it basically from a tree. They get the gummy stuff from a tree. So I was saying, you could, before you leave today, you could see what the frankincense is like, and then that way, whenever you see that in the Bible, Amanda's got it. That way, whenever you see it in the Bible, you'll be able to say, "Hey, I know what that smells like." And Amanda's going to find some of the health benefits to using. We have a little.
That's it. Frankincense.
Oh, let's see it, okay, can I open it?
Yeah. Just yeah.
Strong.
What does it do for diabetes?
Oh.
I don't know. That's why we're gonna find out. It's got a lot of health benefits, so we're gonna find out.
Like it's good,
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, it's been a very long week, and my bookmarker here came out when I was studying Jeremiah, so I don't have our place marked like I normally do. Where did we end up? Did we finish chapter 22? We're on 23 now, right? We started on 23? Okay, so before we get started this morning, Zeke, would you like to open us in prayer?
Precious Lord, as we come before thee this morning, I pray that you forgive us for sins and guide us, dear Lord, throughout this service that we're starting. We pray that you be with us and guide us. Be with the young minister as he come forth and brings a lesson to us. If he can do it in the education of you. And precious Lord, we're also thankful for having his young son with him and his wife, and we pray you bless and guide all three to their journey back home, and most of all, their journey in life. And be with the ones that's here this morning. We're kind of weak in numbers, but I pray you be with the ones that's missed for what reason, or sickness or work. Be with them and guide them to want to come and want to serve. And precious Lord, I ask these prayers in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. So, last week, let's see, David had left one place. He had left the the priest, right? And he, when he left there, when he got there, what did the priest give David?
The showbread,
And also, why did he give him the showbread?
because he was hungry.
Because he was hungry. So, under any other circumstance, under any normal circumstance, he's not going to give him that because it's for
Priest and sacrificial reasons.
right. But he takes, the priest, takes it easy on David. Not takes it easy, but he gives him, he takes pity on him, and shows him some mercy and some love, and gives him this food just as food. And why did he do that though? Did David tell him, "Hey, I'm just straight up hungry"?
Now he's on a mission. He told him he's on a mission for the king.
Now, what do we know about him saying that?
He lied.
And then, what do we know about what did he tell? Did he stop there? Was that the only?
No, it's not the only lie he told.
What was the other lie that he told? Do you remember that, Frank? He said, you remember how much equipment, how much armor and weapons did he have when he got lowered out of the house, when he started running for his life? When his wife lowered him out of the house. How much? He didn't have anything. So he's a warrior, right? And he's on the run, and his life is in danger at any time. So at what point, he needs something to defend himself. So while he's here, he asks for what?
A sword.
But whose sword was it? Goliath. Isn't that interesting? And then he takes that sword, and then where did he go? Was it?
He went to the Philistines.
And where? Let's see.
This is after he left the cave.
Pretty sure. He's not in hiding anymore. He went to the priest, and he got the food, and he got the sword, and now he's left. And that was I believe that was chapter 21 here, and 22. All right.
That's
1 Samuel 22, 20 through 23. And one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. And Abiathar showed David that Saul had slain the Lord's priest. And David said unto Abiathar, I knew it that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all the persons of thy father's house. This is 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 20 through 23. Abide thou with me, fear not, for he seeketh my life that seeketh thy life, but with me thou shalt be in safe guard. Let's see, now go over to 23. Is this where we stopped last time?
I've got verse 6 of 22 mark.
Oh, we stopped in 22.
Actually, I've got verse 6 mark.
Okay, then let's go, because what I just read didn't seem familiar. Like I said, it's been a very long week, and I looked at these last night a little bit to refresh myself on where we were, but I didn't remember because my little marker. I need a better marking system. I need to get Post-it notes and put in there.
Well, that's what I use. I've got Post-it notes to put it under the verse.
Yeah, I need to start getting back to using that. I used to, but I need to do that more because I can write on those. I can't really write on this ribbon. But yeah. Now, okay, so we'll just start over in 22. How about that? Yeah, David therefore departed thence and escaped to the cave Adullam. Now, where did he went from the priest to where?
Philistine.
Yeah, and he went to, whose sword is he carrying?
Goliath.
Goliath's sword, and whose hometown does he go visit?
He goes to
Goliath's hometown. And why did he go there?
Seeking asylum.
That little thing. Yes. he was going to talk to their leader, right, and say, hey, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? You have a problem with Saul, obviously. You're the Gentiles we've been fighting against, and I have a problem with Saul because he's trying to kill me. Will you let me stay here? He wants to go and tell the king, or ask the king that, but then what happens while he's in the middle of the town? He looks around and sees what?
Sees all the people talking about him.
Mm-hmm. And so now he's in the heart of the beast, of the enemy, right? He's behind enemy lines. He's right there in the heart of their city. And could he be attacked at any time?
Oh, yes.
So David, as great of a warrior as he is, and he's walking around with their greatest champion ever. He's walking around with their greatest champion's sword, right? Mm-hmm. In the middle of them. So he realizes this was a dumb move. So then what does he do?
He acts mad.
Mad? Angry?
No.
He acts like a crazy dude,
They're
right?
crazy.
Even so far as to do what with his mouth?
He spits.
Starts foaming at the mouth,
yeah,
right?
There you go.
You know, he acts like he's like a dog with rabies or something, you know? So then what happens? They take him to the king. He gets there before the king. The guy he was there to, in the first place, to be with, to ask for asylum. He finally gets his audience before the king, and then what does he do? Does he just turn the acting job off and start acting normal again?
No, he's still acting, and the kings won't know what about to do with this man. He's mad.
Yeah. I mean, the king's like, what am I going to do with a crazy dude? I don't know who this. I don't care who this guy is. He's crazy. I can't do anything with him. I can't even talk to him. Get him out of my sight, right?
Verse 13, he changed his behavior before them and prayed himself. They had in their hands.
Verse 13 of 21. Right. And so now what? Now David leaves this city, and now we come to chapter 22, right? David therefore departed. I'll read verses 1 and 2, and then we'll start reading after that. David therefore departed thence and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brethren and all his father's house heard it, they went down thither to him. Oh, yeah, sorry.
And everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented, gathered themselves unto him, and he became a captain over them. And there were with him about 400 men.
And they went thence to Mizpah. Moab. Is that Moab?
Which one? Yeah.
They went to Mizpah.
Mizpah.
And Moab. It's Moab.
Moab.
Moab. And he said unto the king of Moab, let my father and my mother, I pray thee, come forth and be with you, till I know what God will do for me.
And he brought them before the king of Moab, and they dwelt with him all the while that David was in the hold.
And the prophet Gad said unto David, abide not in the hold, depart and get thee into the land of Judah. Then David departed and came into the forest of Hereth.
And Saul heard that David was discovered, and the men that were with him. Now Saul abode in Gibeah under the tree of Ramah, having his spear in his hand. All his servants were standing about him.
And Saul said unto his servants that stood about him, hear now, ye Midianite. Will the son of Jes give every one of you fields of and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds?
And all you have conspired against me, there is none that showeth me that my son hath made to lead with the son of Jesse. And there is none of you that is sorry for me, or showeth unto me that my son hath stirred up my servants against me, lie in wait as at this day.
I'll read verse 9, but then after verse 10 we'll stop. Then answered Doeg the Edomite, which was set over the servants of Saul, and said, I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob to Ahimelech the son of Ahitub.
And he inquired of the Lord of him, and gave him victuals, and gave him the sword of Goliath and the Philistine.
Okay, so let's look at this at what we've seen so far in chapter 22. Okay, so looking at verses 1 and 2, we see this area starts with an A. What is it? Adullam. And what is a geographic feature of the land that you notice here?
Okay.
Yeah, there's caves, right? All right. So this is a place, you guys remember before we ended last time, where is David coming from?
Gath.
Coming from Gath in Philistia, right? It's a Philistine place, and he's going back towards Judah and Israel and all that, right? The border. So this Adullam is somewhere in the middle, right? It's near the border. And there's caves everywhere. Doesn't that make sense? Why would there be caves between the border between these two nations? If there's caves, that means there must be mountains, right? And mountains, did they have these imaginary lines drawn up on maps back then? Yeah, they used geographic features most of the time. So those, this is pretty much where the border is. Pretty much. Very close to it. So he's there. Now, we talked about how, you guys remember, what do we see other people doing here in the verses that we're reading? We see that people who Saul has wronged in some way are going to start, you guys remember us talking about that, how they're going to start joining up with him? How we talked about how what is a more effective army, Joseph? The ones that get drafted. Which are the better soldiers? The ones who get drafted and have to fight, or the ones who willingly sign up and want to fight? Yeah. Have you studied about Martin Luther King Jr.?
You already said it.
Have you studied about Gandhi? Do you know who he is? Or was? Have you studied, we're studying about Christ, right? Every time we come to church. Why did people flock to these men? Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Jesus Christ. Why did people of all ages, races, and creeds flock to these people, Joseph? Because they were a unifying figure, right? They didn't use violence necessarily to get what they wanted. But they were a beacon, right? These people gave people hope around them, and they wanted to fight against injustices, right? Martin Luther King Jr. He had character flaws, but overall he did a good work, right?
Yeah,
in the civil rights movement. Yeah, eloquent speeches too. Now, obviously, Jesus is the greatest man who's ever lived, so that speaks, he speaks for himself there. But Gandhi, how in the world did one little man from India change the world? How did that,
by speaking.
Well, really, all he did was he showed the world, he stood up to the injustices that were happening in his country by refusing to eat. He said, what was that called? The not silent protest, but non-physical, non-violent. What am I thinking of here? Passive aggression. Yeah, passive aggression. Yeah. By not fighting and sitting there and saying, "If I die, it's your fault. I'm not going to eat until you fix what you're doing. I'm not going to eat until you stop doing the wrongs that you're doing." Pretty effective, because why? Now, true or false, this guy could have just said that, and he could have just been another guy who starved to death, right? And we would have never known. But why do we remember guys like that? It's because they had people following him. People who joined him. Why did they join him? Why do you think, Joseph?
Because it was fine.
Yeah. And they realized he's right. We don't want to live in a society like this anymore. What about the American Revolution? Could we still be just another British colony? We could just be New Britain, But what happened? Somebody stood up, wanted to make a change, right? And that's what we're seeing here. Is David is on the run for his life, right? Who's trying to kill him?
Saul, the king,
And the king represents
the entire nation.
the government, right? All right. So Saul, the king of Israel, who was at one point a good man, that's the reason why he got the job. He is now trying to kill. How is David related to Saul? Son-in-law, because he's married to his daughter, right? He's married to Saul's daughter. He's trying to kill his own family now because of what? Jealousy, right? Jealousy. He would, how the people were saying, Saul's killed his thousands of people. That's awesome. That's wonderful. But David's killed his tens of thousands. See what I mean? Yeah, every single time Saul does something good, David's already been there, done that 10 times better. But David does it with a smile on his face and love in his heart, and in faith to his king and his God. Saul is just now, we've seen the fall of this good man. He's worried about the preeminence, the attention of the people. So it's driven him mad. It's driven him, to the point where he's trying to kill his own flesh, his own family now. Anyone who gets in his way. Now we see, I say all this to set this up. Now we see other people who Saul has wronged. Other people who are discontent. Other people that are in distress are going to start doing what? Getting up and going to join the battle, right? Going to join, So what do we see here? We see David going from enemy territory back towards his nation, but he stops somewhere in the middle in these caves, and then we start to see people join up, a little bit here, a little bit there. Pretty soon, you got 400 people. Pretty soon, right after that, you got 600 people. You got tons of people trying to sign up to be with him. Okay, now look at verses 3 through 5. And David went thence to Mizpah of Moab. Let's see. Look in these verses and look for that word hold. A stronghold. It's I'm using Bob Knox's commentary here. It refers to a wilderness or mountainous place for hiding, defense, and gathering supplies for battle. A hold, right? A stronghold. Now look at Gad. You guys remember that place called Gad? Not Gad, place. But we talked about that prophet. You remember? He advised David as he fled from Saul in 1 Samuel 22:5. And he brought God's options, later on when David messes up, when he's king. He's the one. This prophet is the one who brings the. God tells him to go to King David and tell him, "You're going to be punished, but you're going to pick your punishment, pick your switch, basically." Now, from the cave of Adullam, David took his people, his band, his army to Mizpah in the land of Moab. Why would the king of Moab agree to care for David's parents? You guys remember how he asked the king to care for his parents? David did. Why would he agree to that? Possibly because his great-grandmother was a Moabite. You guys remember Ruth in the Bible? Yeah. As long as David was an outlaw of Israel, the king of Moab took care of them. So his reputation as an outlaw, in certain places that would be bad, but here, to an enemy of the state, he tried to go and talk to, he tried to go to Gath and talk to that, that leader and say, the enemy is my enemy is my friend, but he realized that's not going to work. So he had to act like he was a crazy guy to get out of there safely, right? But now he goes to Moab and he tries this enemy of my enemy is my friend. And what's happening?
It's working.
It's working. So are the Moabites Jews?
Sort of, kind of.
Yeah. Now, you guys remember back in their lineage, they had a split. The Moabites broke off. So they are very close to one another, but there's animosity between these two groups. So, capitalizing on this, whether he wanted to or not, it benefits David to partner up with the Moabites, who are enemies of Israel. And so the Moabites provide protection for at least David's family, immediate family. It was not long until the prophet Gad was sent to David to tell him to go back into the land of Judah and dwell there. Did God send Gad directly to David, or did he send him through Samuel? It is not known. I'm reading from Bob Knox's commentary here, but these are very good questions. It's not known, but one does know how the message ultimately came from God. God was in essence telling David that he was going to take care of him. Just where the forest of Hereth was, we don't know. I wish I could pull up a map and show you this is the exact place that we're talking about, but that forest that it's talking about, we don't know exactly where that's at. We talked last time about that prophet Gad, but we're going to see more about him later, so we'll get to that when we see him later. But we read through verses 6 through 10 as well, so we'll look into that right now. Saul received word, look at verses 6 through 10 of this chapter. Saul received word of David's whereabouts after David returned to Judah, right? So think of yourself, put yourself in Saul's position. He's been trying to kill this guy. He's been trying to kill this guy for a long time now, but he's gone missing, right? He tried to show up at his own daughter's house. Saul tried to come to his own daughter's house and kill her husband, David, in his sleep. He had a sure thing. He was going to do it, he was going to do it quick and clean and just get it over with. But David escaped out of the bedroom, right? Out the window. He's been missing all this time. And every single time, he was supposed to show up, just like all the other Jews. He was supposed to show up where? At the feast, right? And what happened there? Did David show up? No. He was supposed to. I mean, it's a commandment of God way back in the, this is known. That's how bad it's been. David couldn't even show up for the feast. David's own son, Saul's own son, Jonathan, David's best friend, has come and sworn his allegiance to David instead of his father, because he knows his father is in the wrong and David's in the right. And he cares about him that much. So Saul has everybody, including his own family, working against him to try to help him find this guy who he wants to kill because he's jealous of. But now, you just imagine it. He's just sitting there, day by day, thinking about this stuff. But he's got to take care of other duties too. He's just sitting there, and then all of a sudden, you can just think about it. Somebody busts in and tells him, "Hey, David's back in your country." Can you imagine what he's going to be thinking? Can you imagine if you've been looking for somebody for months or however long, and he's been your sole focus, like he's been your top of the line priority number one. How are you going to react when somebody tells you, "Hey, he's back on your turf, and he's got buddies"? What are you going to do? Well, let's look at here. Saul was in Gibeah of Ramah, which appears to be his capital. Notice that all of his servants were standing around him in his court. Who were these servants? Look at verse 7. Somebody read verse 7.
Saul said unto his servants that stood about him, "Hear ye now, you Benjamites. Will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds?"
So, who were these servants?
Benjamites.
What's interesting about those?
That's the tribe that David's from.
And also,
Saul.
And also, what's on the totem pole of the status?
Lowest.
They're on the lowest. The Benjamites are way down here at the low part. So it's interesting that instead of Saul getting so mad that he wipes out all of David's own people, the rest of the Benjamites, instead of wiping them out, which some people would do out of anger, where are the Benjamites? They're in his court, right? And he's talking about all these good things that have happened. He appealed to them, asking if any other king would have given them fields and would have placed them in positions of authority. So instead of killing them, he's given them land, property, and by extension food for their families, that they grow on those vineyards. And authority. How do we know that he's giving them authority?
Captains over thousands and captains over hundreds.
Mm-hmm. And this implies that if David were king, see what Saul's trying to do here? He's trying to get in people's heads. This implies that if David were the king, he would favor his own tribe, just as Saul had done with his. Saul was appealing to their sense of greed. In verse 8, one notices his twisted mindset in seeing a conspiracy all around him. Read verse 8 for me, Joseph. Chuck.
One of you have conspired against me, and there is no one who reveals to me that my son has made a covenant with the son of Jesse. And there is not one of you who is sorry for me, or reveals to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me and lied in wait. That it is this day.
Okay, so do you think Saul is in the right mindset, or do you think he's a little paranoid? A little bit paranoid. Is this the only time he's acted like this, Frank?
No.
I mean, this dude, it seems to be that this is becoming his calling card, right? I mean, every single time he's saying something, he's like looking over his shoulder. You know what I mean?
Don't you think he was paranoid because he was grown and the boy was a lad? Don't you think he was a little paranoid because he was grown and when it's time to outdo him, he was a boy?
That might have something to do with
He
it.
was falling, that's why he was so
Yeah,
paranoid.
that's the big part, is that he was losing everything, and he was trying. The one person he was trying to kill the most in this world, because of jealousy and just pure hatred, he was losing everything, and the one guy he hated the most and wanted to kill was gaining everything. Every single time Saul lost something, who got it?
David.
Was David like hiding behind his coattails, waiting for everything to drop and then just picking it up real quick? Was he stealing it out of his pockets? Was he taking it from him by force? Nope. They've never had a confrontation. David's never confronted Saul to this point yet, has he? But Saul has tried to kill David several times. He's tried to pin him against the wall with a spear. How hard would you have to throw something at somebody, Joseph, to pin them against the wall? That's pretty hard. It would have to go through them and stick into a wall, right? Getting a spear to stick into a wall without hitting something is hard. But Saul wants to throw it so hard it goes through another human and hits them against the wall and keeps them there. That's a pretty large amount of hate, right?
He didn't like him, you can tell that.
Yeah. He was jealous of everything. But what in the world, Saul could have avoided all of this, couldn't he have? Would David have ever had to have popped up in this ever at all if Saul had just done what he was supposed to do? Yeah, I mean, seriously. David would have just been another shepherd boy, faithfully serving wherever he was needed, if Saul had just been. And we would be talking about, hey, how great King Saul was. He's a great example of faith. But we have to say the opposite.
Jealousy was eating him alive.
Huh?
Jealousy was eating Saul alive because
Oh, yeah.
it's causing his own downfall. Jealousy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, so he sees this conspiracy all around him, and we just read verse 8. He had a pity party I like how Bob Knox said it. He has a pity party, saying that no one felt sorry for him in the position he imagined for himself. This is often the way tyrants behave, always fearful of someone taking their power from them. Doeg, it's a funny sounding name, but Doeg, who was mentioned in the last chapter, 21 verse 7, told Saul that he wanted to hear, or what he wanted to hear. Notice the tactics of Doeg here. He told a partial truth. He made it appear as though the priest Ahimelech favored David over the king. How could he make him? What did Ahimelech do for David?
Hey, give him food,
Fed him and gave him
or sword.
the sword, right? The greatest sword of the greatest enemy they've ever fought before. You know, their prize stick. You know, he gave him that. So he's making it seem as though this priest Ahimelech favors David, and by extension, if he can convince Saul that the priests of the nation favor David more than Saul, then what is he basically telling him? God. He's trying to convince him. He's trying to basically say God favors him more than you. What's that going to do to him? He's already wroth. He's already mad. All right. Let's see here. He made it appear as though the priest Ahimelech favored David over the king. Apparently, Doeg had ill feelings toward the priest and saw an opportunity to cause them trouble. This appears to be proven in that he did not hesitate to kill them. Further, he went so far as to kill all of their families. In essence, Doeg accused them of conspiracy against Saul. He failed to inform Saul that David had lied to Ahimelech. See that? You guys, you see why David lying is not good? No one ever lying is ever good for any reason. But do you see, because there's always going to be some type of consequence that comes with it. That's the reason why I say that. Now, yes, Rahab the harlot lied to save the lives of the Jews, but what else did it cost? It cost the lives of all those in Jericho. There is always a consequence that comes with sin. So there's that. But we do know that Rahab was counted righteous for what she did. What I'm trying to get at here is, did David have to pay the consequences for the lies that he told? Or did somebody else pay for them?
Somebody else had to.
Okay, so because he lied to the priest, he was able to get food, right? Because he lied to Ahimelech, the priest, he was able to get a sword, right? Because he lied, he was able to carry on his way and with a full belly and a way to protect himself, right? Now this Doeg, he's capitalizing on this, and he doesn't tell Saul, hey, David was able to keep living because he lied. He tells Saul, hey, the priests are turning against you. See how this is getting all twisted up? He doesn't tell Saul that, the reasons why the priest gave him food or gave him, all that. So, yeah, I don't know what this dude's agenda was, but we see the results here. He failed to inform Saul that David had lied to Ahimelech in order to gain food and the sword of Goliath. With the frame of mind that Saul was in, this spelled disaster for anyone he suspected of aiding the enemy. Why? If Doeg is sowing these seeds of discord in Saul's mind, what do we know about Saul's mindset already? He's paranoid, isn't he? And so if you're the one in power and you have the power to have anybody you want killed at any moment, and you're freaking out about everything, you're always looking over your shoulder, and somebody paints a target for you, and says, this guy's helping the one person you want to kill most, what are you going to do? So, what are you going to do? I mean, if you're prone to killing anybody that gets in your way, and somebody paints a target and says, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that person helped your enemy, what are you going to do?
You're gonna shoot the target.
You're going to shoot the target. Yep. So, as to Doeg's position as head of the servants, the Septuagint says he was over the mules of Saul. The ASB says he stood by the servants of Saul. Okay, so that was through verse 10. Now let's read 11 through 19. Okay, Sister Betty, you're up.
And the king sent to call Amalek the priest, the son of Abraham,
Ahimelech, the priest, the son of Ahitub.
and all his father's house, and the priests that were in Nob, they came all of them to the king.
And Saul said, Hear now, thou son of Ahitub. And he answered, Here I am, my lord.
And Saul said unto him, Why have ye conspired against me, thou and the son of Jesse, in that thou hast given him bread and a sword, and hast inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me to lie in wait as at this day?
Then Ahimelech answered the king and said, And who is so faithful among all thy servants as David, which is the king's son-in-law, and goeth at thy bidding, and is honorable in thine house?
Did I then begin to inquire of God for him? For be it from me, let not the king impute anything to his servant, or to anything in the house of my father. For your servant knew nothing of all this little or much.
Thou shalt surely die, Amalek, battle, and all thy father's house.
And the king said unto the footmen that stood about him, Turn and slay the priest of the Lord, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he fled and did not show it to me. But the servants of the king would not put forth their hand to fall upon the priest of the Lord.
And the king said to Duai, Turn thou and fall upon the priest. And Duai, the Amalek, turned and fell upon the priest, and slew on that day 75 persons that did wear a linen ephod.
And all the city of the priests smote he with the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and sucklings, and oxen and donkeys, and sheep with the edge of the sword.
And one of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David.
And Abiathar shewed David that Saul had slain the Lord's priest.
David said unto Abiathar, I knew it that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have occasioned the death of all persons of thy father's house.
Stay with me, do not fear, for he who seeks my life seeks your life, but with me you shall be safe.
So, again, we talked a little bit about it before we read it, but did David do a good thing by lying to feed his belly and get a sword? No. Why? What happened after that? He didn't have to pay the price, but what happened?
The priest and his family had to pay the price.
The priest and his family, how many?
80 and
How much is a score, Joseph?
So, I used to know.
60.
20. Yeah, it's like 20, right? Yeah.
So
How many?
85?
Yeah. 85 is 85. And that's 85 priests. How do you know it's 85 priests?
as I said, they wore the linen ephod.
Uh-huh. And did he stop at, did Doeg stop at 85 priests?
No.
Huh? Huh? Speak up. He's a little louder.
He killed like all the donkeys and livestock.
He went, and doesn't it say something about even the women and the children somewhere? Nob, verse 19. Somebody read verse 19.
For men and women, children, and nursing infants, oxen, and donkeys and sheep with the sword.
So he just whacks them, right? He just hits them with a sword and tells them, he just hits them with the soft side of it and says, don't do this anymore. Don't side with the enemy. What does it say? What part of the sword does it say?
The age.
Edge. And so, what is this place, Nob? What is this place called, Nob? Isn't that where all these priests are, right? And their families, and all of their animals, and their houses. So, let me get this straight, Mr. Saul. You were a farmer boy, and God counted you righteous. So he loved you so much and counted you so righteous that he gave you the job as to be king over everyone because you were such a good boy. Yeah, that's right. But then you messed up. You tried to make excuses. You didn't take responsibility. You kept messing up. You kept turning from God. You kept, losing all your faith. You kept doing all these bad things. And now everybody hates you. And now you only got this job because God gave it to you. And now let me get this straight. You think just because some dude told you one thing about what one priest did, you think that God has turned against you. And so let me get this straight. You're going to try to make your situation better by killing all the priests and their families?
You think somebody's gonna be mad?
Does it like, to me, there's no sense in all this. Like, why in the world would Saul ever think that this is a good idea? Is he? Because he's not thinking, right? He's just reacting. It's his gut reaction to just fly off the handle, and right now he's shoot first and ask questions later, right? He's just like, just kill them all. Doeg, just go kill them all.
Verse 17, he says that because their hand also is with David, because they knew when he fled and did not show it to him.
See, to him, he legitimately thinks that all the priests have banded with David, right? But what's going on? Did they know? Did all the priests do it? No. Just like if in the churches of Christ right now, if one preacher decides to go crazy and start saying, okay, let's have instruments in worship. Yeah, let's do it. If one eldership just starts saying, yeah, let's only have services once a month, twice a year. Does that mean every Church of Christ is with them? No. Did all of these priests do what, did all of these priests feed David? Give him a sword? No, there's one. Did that man know that David was lying to him? No. Why would he need to? David said, I am working for the king. And the priest was loyal to the king. Otherwise, how do we know that? Because that's what David told him in order to get the food and get the protection. That's the sword. He said, I'm doing a job for the king. Will you help me out? Yeah, we love the king. Here you go. And now look what Ahimelech got for, and here's where we got to realize Ahimelech should not have given him the showbread. Why? Didn't deserve it. He was not a priest. It was not for him, right? That's why it's so important that we don't just start saying, hey, who's hungry? You hungry right now? Yeah, I'm hungry. I only ate a little fruit strip, but there's some crackers and juice right there. I'm just gonna have a little snack while I'm up here. Well, if I were to just do that, what in the world? I hope somebody would come up here and deck me and be like, no, that's not what that's for, man. I would hope that somebody would say, hey, stop it. That's not what that's for. Ahimelech should not have given David that showbread. Just shouldn't have.
Cost him his life.
Cost him his life. So Ahimelech messed up. He was trying to do, he had good intentions, right? He was trying to help a guy out. But he knew, a good priest would have known he shouldn't have done that. He could have helped. He probably could have helped David in another way. But it didn't help that David influenced Ahimelech's decision through a lie, right? So now we see Ahimelech who was faithful to the king, maybe backed off a little bit on his faithfulness to God. He should never have given that bread away. But now we see this priest who was faithful to the king and tries to even tell him. He straight up tries to tell him, I didn't know. I did not know. He was lying. And then Saul's like, okay, I don't believe you. Fact is, you did it, and you helped my enemy. David is my enemy. You fed him, and you gave him the sword of my greatest enemy, of the greatest enemy we've ever fought before. So guess what, Ahimelech? Off with the head. You guys remember Alice in Wonderland? That movie or that book where the Queen of Hearts is always like, off with the head, off with her head. You remember that? Yeah, this is what Saul was like, off with the head. And then, so the Benjamites in there, you remember the Benjamites in this court? They're like, we ain't gonna do that. Good move on their part. They're like, we ain't gonna kill the priest. And then, so who does? Doeg. What's his problem anyway?
They shouldn't get where Saul's at.
What is this dude's problem? I mean, this guy seems to be a jerk. He seems like he's the one who's stirring the pot. You know what I mean? But anyway, he goes out and he kills. He says, "Yes, master." Okay. It's like Saul's throwing the tennis ball and Doeg's the little dog. Or he says, "Sick 'em, boy." Okay. Not only does he kill all the priests, but he kills all of their animals and he kills their families. He wipes Nob out. You guys see how bad this is? Like, imagine somebody getting so mad at one person at the Memphis School of Preaching, that they go and they kill one person. But they're so mad at preachers or whatever in general, they're so mad that they just kill all the students there and they kill all of their family members and all their little dogs too. Can you imagine somebody being that angry?
Yeah, he wants the Jews to live.
Huh?
Like Hitler.
Yeah, Hitler didn't want any of his enemies to live, so and neither did Stalin. I still feel, it won us the war to partner with Russia, but we partnered with Stalin, who killed more people than Hitler for worse reasons.
You hear,
Yeah, I hate that, but
you hear people at work, and I know Dylan Frank's here too at work. Oh, this bomber, go over and just bomb them, wipe them out. They had the same attitude then as they got now. They got it now if they do it. Just drop a bomb in the city and kill everybody in it. That same attitude then is still here now.
yeah.
It's shameful to say it like that, but that's the way it is. To stop, fool me.
Yeah, there's a
To stop the disease, you either have to cover around it, or dig a hole big with it, and that's what that's consists of.
yeah.
Just destroy the whole one.
And that's what Doeg, that type of mentality is what Doeg's doing here. He says, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so I'll just slaughter the whole thing. Why stop at one priest? I'll kill them all. I'll fix this problem right now. That's what Doeg is thinking. He's the kind of guy that is sitting here in America that says, let's just blow them all up. If we just wipe out their city, then there's no more terrorists. Where's the terrorist city, Joseph? Everywhere. If terrorists are like Christians in the fact that they don't have a home base. See what I mean? They could be anywhere.
They do.
Terrorists.
They do from childhood up to
Yeah.
when they separate.
Like if somebody wanted to attack the Church of Christ, where would they launch the bombs?
I think it's still a matter after they start.
Well, what I'm talking about is the Church of Christ is not a physical thing, right? So they wouldn't be able to launch bombs at the Church of Christ, right? They could launch bombs at buildings with words the Church of Christ on it all they want, but you know, the church is not a physical thing, so they're not going to be able to blow up the Church of Christ, the body of Christ, right? Yeah. So, you know, all these people, I think it's hilarious that they say, let's just carpet bomb all of the Middle East and that'll take care of the problem. And then they're like, well, what about the terrorists that are blowing up stuff in Paris? What about the ones that are flying planes into America? What about the ones that are over here in England? What about the ones over here in China? They're everywhere, man. You can't just, you know, it's not like they walk around with a badge saying, I'm a terrorist, with a smiley face, you know, so.
Go back to what I just said, just a minute ago, you started to play where that starts,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's taught over there from childhood, like you're in Florida.
Yeah.
That's taught from childhood.
Yep.
Then it's separated and sent to other places.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to Methodist School of Preaching, that's the biggest thing we've got around here. You cured them preachers off. You thin y'all out,
Mm-hmm.
it'll thin us out around here.
Yeah.
You know, that's where it starts.
Hopefully not, but that is
Yeah.
a military tactic is what you're talking about, yeah. And it could be effective if people didn't gird up their loins and say, I'm wearing the whole armor of God. I don't care what they do, you know. Christianity thrives the most when we're pushed. When we're told we can't do something because that just doesn't fit society or whatever. When Christians, true or false, it's human nature to be a little rebellious. When mommy and daddy say to the child, don't do this, what happens? And they're going to do it. Yeah, they get popped on the bottom, and we're trying to, parents are trying to teach the children why not to do this, but it's human nature to rebel, right? Isn't it interesting that God uses human nature to benefit Christianity? That little rebellious side, he says, yeah, the world is going to tell you to try to do this, but I say do this. See what I mean? You see where God has turned that frown upside down? See that? He says, okay, you guys want to be a rebellious people? Be rebellious for me. Rebel against evil for me, for my sake. Rebel against evil by doing good. Here's how. Here's why. Does he have to tell us why, Joseph? God, the creator of the universe, everything from a molecule to a planet, and even bigger, and even smaller. He created everything. Does he if he tells you to do something, does he have to tell you why? If he tells you jump, do you have to ask him how high? No, you just start jumping. But guess what? What does he do for us? What does he do for us? Does he tell us how to do things? And does he have to tell us why? Yeah. Now, anyway, that was a little excursion from, the text, but it all relates back and when we think about obedience. Ahimelech could have been more obedient, right? He could have said, I can't give you this showbread. Can't do it. I'll get in trouble with, not only will I get in trouble here on this earth, but more importantly, I'm going to get in trouble with the man upstairs. I can't give you his food. I cannot give you this specific thing, which is for a specific purpose, or else it's going to affect me. He could have said that, and Ahimelech wouldn't have died. Straight up, I'm saying. Because there would have been no reason for him to die, right? But the fact is, he did. He messed up, and he gave him that bread to save his life. He had good intentions, but it cost him. David lied, and it cost all these other people their lives. This is extremely, extremely, extremely sad. And it blows my mind. We talk about David's sins. When I say David sinned, what's the first thing that pops in your head? Bathsheba. What's the second thing most people think about when we say David sinned? Talk about the census that he took. Well, what's wrong with counting the people in your nation? He was counting his military. And God said, don't you worry about people, numbers of people. You lean on me. I'm worth more than all of your armies combined. But we need to be teaching. We need to be remembering. David messed up before he was even king.
Amen.
David messed up right here. Straight up lied to save his own skin. Lied. Anyway, verses 20 through 23. Only one of Ahimelech's sons, and who's Ahimelech?
The priest.
Okay. Only one of his sons escaped the slaughter. Though the details of his escape are not given, he told David what had happened, and David manfully took the blame for the death of his entire family. Well, that's nice, but a little too late. Too little too late, right? Because what's been done already?
The slaughter's been took place. The lie's been told.
I mean, he owns up to it. Now, why should David take the blame for this tragedy? How could he have known that Saul would do what Saul would do with the information Doeg gave him? Why would David be responsible for taking the blame here?
So he lied.
Yeah.
He lied.
Yeah. He realizes now, oh man, I messed up. In that moment where he was just hungry and he told that lie, was he thinking this could cost thousands of people's lives? Yeah. When Esau, you guys remember Joseph, you ever studied about Jacob and Esau, the twin brothers? One of them, Esau, he was the firstborn, and he had the inheritance that was coming to him. And you guys remember about Jacob and Esau? What did Esau do? He was thinking of this, right? He was thinking about that belly, right? He was hungry. He was out there working and hunting and working hard. And he come home and he was like, man, I'm hungry. Jacob, pour me a cup of that soup. Give me a bowl of that soup. Oh, sure. Sure. You're the firstborn of your family, right, Joseph? You got a younger brother named Jacob? Convenient. Man, this is a good lesson. You got a younger brother named Jacob. You're the firstborn. Let's just say we live in the old system where you get the inheritance first, right? In the old system, you get the first part of the inheritance, the biggest part. Now, let's say you come home and you're hungry. What's your favorite sport? Baseball? You're in baseball? Let's say you just came home from work, the hardest game or the hardest practice you've ever had, and you're just worn out, and you're hungry, and you come home and your little brother is making the best pot of soup you've ever smelled, ever seen. Now let's just say Jacob says, or you come in and you want some of that soup, right? Duh. Good, and you're hungry. You say, give me some of that soup. He says, okay, but you got to give me something. I mean, dude, you are so hungry, you will do anything for this food, right? Now, he says, give me your inheritance. But you're so hungry, you feel like you're gonna die if you don't eat right now. And mom and dad are out, and they're not gonna be coming back from their trip, for like 2 more days. And so you guys can't get groceries until like 2 more days. You think that if you don't eat now, you're just gonna die. So this is what Esau's thinking, he's so hungry, he's gonna die. Blah blah blah. He gives his inheritance away. Think about that.
Jacob didn't ask for much, did he?
Yeah, yes, he didn't ask for much.
For both.
That's a pretty inexpensive bowl of soup in the moment, but in the end, what ended up happening? He gave his inheritance away to his brother for a bowl of soup, and how long did that soup last on his tummy? Yeah, just a few minutes, a few seconds maybe, and then it was gone, right? It was gone, just like his inheritance. It was gone. Now, how did I get on that? What we were reading in verses 20 through 20. We were reading. How did I get on that? I just had a brain went off the rails. We were talking about Esau and about how a momentary thing.
He traded his.
One moment's bad decision can.
Yeah,
come out
that's
right.
right. That's right. Yeah. David in that moment wasn't thinking about the consequences ahead in the future. Neither was Esau, right? Esau wasn't thinking about the future. He was thinking about the here and now. David, when he lied about getting food to fill his stomach, he wasn't thinking about the future. He was thinking about the here and now. What happened with, who are the Edomites? They're the descendants of Esau, right? So for generation after generation after generation after generation after generation after generation after generation, people, person after person, for thousands of people every year being born into the Edomite clan, right? The groups. The Edomites are the ones who broke away, and they're the descendants of Esau. They became enemies of Israel for hundreds of years. You think Esau in that moment when he was hungry and he came and he gave away his inheritance, you think that he was thinking about all of those people that would die and go to hell in the wrong? He didn't think about that. He didn't, I mean, that, how in the world would that ever enter his mind? How in the world would he ever think about that? Today, here today, if we decide to, we have a choice between a sin to get us out of trouble or tell the truth and suck it up and take it. Take it like a man, take it like a woman. You know, just take it. Be a responsible person. How in the world are we supposed to know in the future if, you know, if we do lie and we do sin and we do something we're not supposed to do? How are we supposed to know all the consequences of that? Well, the fact is, we have examples. What was that famous adage about if you fail to learn from history, it's doomed to repeat itself, right? If we don't look at this stuff and say, hey, these people didn't think when they chose to sin. They didn't think about the stuff in the future, what could happen. If we don't learn from that and think about that when we're presented with the opportunity, we don't know what can happen down the line. You know, let's say a student at school decides to plagiarize. He straight up knows, all I got to do is take 5 seconds to type in the right format to correctly make sure I give the original author the credit he deserves or she deserves for the work that I'm quoting them on. If a student fails to do that, and they turn in that paper knowing that they haven't done that, and then they get caught for plagiarism, for cheating, basically, stealing somebody else's words. If you don't quote them correctly, then you're stealing their work and calling it your own. Can that student be kicked out of school? Yeah. But if they didn't, you know, maybe they weren't thinking about it when they turned in that paper. You know, they didn't. How in the world were they supposed to know? Well, that's why you're supposed to know what you're doing. You know, at all times. You're supposed to think about what you're doing. Sometimes I look before I leap. You know, I try to look before I leap all the time. But sometimes in life we leap before we look. You know, but we try to do as much looking before we leap as possible. So there's chapter 22. Now, in the last 2 or 3 minutes here before our break, does anybody want to talk about what we've covered today?
Just like abortion, the woman needs to get rid of the baby right then, and then later, before I do.
That's a much better example, what you just said, than what I was saying. That's a much better example. Because what happens when the woman wants to get rid of the baby because her life is going to be ruined and everything's going to change and it's going to be so hard, and they don't want to bring a baby into this hateful world and this, you know, this world that's going to hell. You hear all these things, these reasons as to why they don't want this baby to be born. But then what happens to a lot of them right after it's too late? Right after the procedure to have the abortion, what do a lot of women do? Yeah, they wish that they had Never done it, right? And they don't think about the consequences of the psychological damage. Look at the suicide rate. Look at the suicide rate of people who have abortion, of women who have abortions, and even the fathers of children who were aborted. Look at the suicide rate. And what is suicide? Killing your own self, right? Taking your own life. Look at the suicide rate. Just do that sometime this week, if you can bring yourself to do it. Of all the people who have had an abortion, and see how it affects. You know, we need to be quoting stuff like that when we're fighting against abortion. You know, along with the Bible verses we're quoting, we need to be bringing up facts, saying, okay, you want to keep letting people have abortions? Well, why don't you explain away how many the consequences that happen after that? Why don't you talk about how many of these men and women have to go through psychological counseling for the rest of their lives if they don't kill themselves?
Have they made a law now where they have to have an ultrasound before they can have an abortion?
There's certain states that are trying to do that. Tennessee's passed it. I think Texas, I don't know about it, but I've heard mention of it. I don't know if it's been passed or not. Different states are popping up saying, you've got to get these certain things. Yeah. Yeah. And what does that do? When we're talking about people thinking about what they're going to do and consequences later. What does seeing an ultrasound of the baby do for you?
Put a face and you see that there's a real living being, and that opens the eyes up to a lot of people because you can't, what you can't say. And so you know what you're fixing to do.
Yep.
Just like this school in Jordan, every year, today's my son's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he passed away? No, I aborted him, but today he's 14 years old.
No, you didn't give him a chance at life.
They said it's not a baby, but it is.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, it's got 2 eyes, 2 hands, 2 feet, a heart. It's got its own unique fingerprints. It's got its own unique DNA, unlike anyone else in the world.
What makes me mad, they got more than half a pill. Look how many they done killed that away, besides the butcher knife.
You know what's interesting about, while we're on that subject, you know what's interesting about abortion? Advocates. Joe, you work in the medical field. What do we use? What are 2 or 3 things that we use on a person's body parts, that we use to identify that a person is alive or dead?
Stethoscope, you talking about like instruments that we use?
No, body parts. I'm thinking heartbeat, brain activity, and fingerprints are that's how you identify them, right?
Yeah.
And DNA.
Yeah, brain activity, heartbeat, and DNA.
Yeah. So that, if somebody, so we can identify that someone is a person using their fingerprints and their DNA and even their dental records and stuff. But mainly the DNA and the fingerprints, right? So that we can identify a person is unique by those things. And we can identify that they're alive if they have a heartbeat and their brain is active, right? Isn't that interesting? That none of those things apply to a baby in the womb. Huh.
Talking about the ultrasound.
But you can see its heartbeat, they can hear its
Yep.
heartbeat.
Isn't that interesting?
Those newer ultrasounds are almost like taking a photograph now.
Yep.
It's different even from the time when we had ultrasounds for our kids to what it is now. It's like almost taking, you can see all the details. You can make it out when, like, even as far back as Joseph was born.
Oh, yeah.
You can see the heartbeat and everything, but
Oh, yeah.
nowadays it's like taking a photograph, and so I can see where that would make an impact on the mother,
Yeah.
before she makes that decision.
Mm-hmm. Before it was just a doctor who may not have even wanted the woman to have an abortion, just saying, hey, here's your options. It's just an extension of your body. It's just another piece of tissue until it comes out. Now, it's pretty hard to explain to them. And oh yeah, that's just a piece of your tissue. If it's, you know, moving around autonomously inside of her.
It's a scientific term that are still used,
Yeah.
you know, at certain stages, embryo, fetus, you know, and then the moment it's born, then it's
Yep.
an infant.
Oh yeah, amazing.
But 2 seconds before it's born, it's still a fetus. You
Yeah.
know,
It's amazing, huh?
First thing that happens is the heartbeat.
that's like within like a few weeks. Yes, you already have a heartbeat in a few weeks.
Yeah. It's interesting. But if there's anything we can learn from today's Bible study, from 1 Samuel 22, if there's one thing that we can learn overall, what is it?
Don't lie.
Huh?
Don't lie.
Don't lie. By extension, don't sin. Why?
Lies have consequences.
Every sin has consequences, right? And whether you see them or not, right? Whether they affect you or someone else, right? So this week, as we're going through this week, don't do it. Huh?
Sooner or later, that lie's gonna catch up with you.
Oh yeah, and how fast did it take for that lie to catch up to David? Pretty quick, right? But what happened in the meantime? Hundreds of people died, maybe even thousands. Sad, very sad. Because I don't know what the spiritual condition of all those people were. Hopefully, if they were the sons and daughters and wives and all that of the priests, hopefully most of them were counted righteous, you know, at the time of their death. Hopefully they made it. But
Just like the Jews said,
You know.
there's gonna die at the hands of Hitler. They didn't have time to say, forgive me, and they didn't know it was gonna die.
yeah, there's been several accounts of Jewish men and women who survived the Holocaust, and they've converted to Christianity afterwards, and so they could actually be saved. But if they were just a Jew, if they had remained a Jew, then would they go to heaven? But Betty, they're nice people. Come on, they gotta be making it there. It's not their fault they were killed. It's not they're not the ones who created the Holocaust.
It's a Holocaust.
But real quick, doesn't that make you feel like you should go out and evangelize, like even more? When you think about all these people whose lives were cut short because of somebody else's sin. Well, yeah, they died because of someone else's sin, but what was their spiritual condition when they died? Yeah, most of those people might have lived on in their 70s, 80s, or more if they had not been killed by Hitler. But does that take away from the fact that when they were here, they were still responsible for their own lives, spiritually?
It's a Holocaust museum in Texas. We was gonna go see it, but Jamie had to go
Mhm.
preach that night, you know. He told me he was gonna come back, but he came.
Yeah. Well, sometimes those things happen. There's a really good Holocaust museum in Washington, D.C., I believe. I think it's Washington, D.C. So if you guys ever head out that way, check out the museums in D.C. They're all free. So it's a good family thing. Well, do you guys have anything else about 1 Samuel 22? So, okay, well, we'll take a break for a few minutes. Thank you, guys.